Let's do it.
Hi, welcome to the FAM177A1 kickoff event with RareX. The mission of the FAM177A1 Research Fund is to improve the lives of patients with FAM177A1 disorder. Kids like Charlotte, Cooper, Layla, Alyssa, Bella, and Emma, and the FAM patients to come. One of our best chances to improve our children's lives is to get researchers to focus on FAM so that they can better understand the disease and develop treatments for it. Researchers need data. They need really good, accessible data. And as a patient organization, we need an efficient way to collect and distribute that data. We also need to know that that data is safe and that we own it and determine how it's used. That's why we've chosen to partner with RareX. So now I'm going to hand it off to the fine folks at RareX who are going to tell you more about themselves and help us launch our FAM177A1 Data Collection Program so that we are research ready. So Tom and Caitlin, take it away.
All right, thanks so much. And I'm going to do some screen sharing. Jill, I need you to allow me to do that.
Okay. Do you know how I do that? Settings?
You should
probably, yeah.
On the bottom, the third tab over, just hover your mouse. You should see it share screen.
The third tab over, I have.
No, I'm talking to Tom. Just hover your mouse on the bottom of your screen. And then it should prompt up a share screen.
You're not, oh wait, let's see.
You might have to make Tom a co-host to give him permission to share.
I have, let me see, advanced sharing options. One person who can share. Oh, who can start host only. So
take off host only maybe.
I know it's grayed out though. I can't do it from right here. Do I have to somehow? All right, I'm going to pause the recording.
Sure. Nope. Okay. Okay. Great. So hi, my name is Tom Hume. I'm with RareX, and I'm going to go through a little bit about what RareX is, but I'm also going to talk a little bit about exactly what you need to do to log into this data collection program. And I'm going to go to the screen. Everybody see that okay? And because we have a pretty small, intimate group, the bigger groups, we often say, put your questions in the chat. I think here, just raise your hand and please interrupt me as we go along and get questions. So, again, I'm going to cover a little bit of what RareX is, why we even exist, what we do a little bit differently, and how we help patient advocacy organizations or patient advocacy groups. You'll hear the term PAG a lot. That's patient advocacy group. And then what you need to do to get started and start adding your data. So RareX is a nonprofit. We're created to accelerate rare disease research and treatments and cures. Being a nonprofit is wonderful because we're agnostic. We're institutional agnostic. We're disease agnostic. We can work across many different groups. And what we do is we help groups like yours collect, connect, and share data. And one is collecting, so that's what this call is about, collecting data from the actual disease community, patient data, survey data, and then we connect that to researchers and we make that available to researchers virtually anywhere in the world. When I refer throughout this whole presentation to data, it's all called de-identified data. So it means that although you'll be filling out surveys and adding sort of the natural history of the disease progression, a researcher will never know who that person is. And what happens is the researchers look at the aggregate data, all the data, and they find interesting correlations, disease correlations, not only among your disease that you're fighting or battling, but also multiple rare diseases that are in the database. RareX is also unique to RareX. We don't sell the data. We don't own the data. We don't sell it. You own the data. And there's a very specific consent form and survey sharing survey that you do, and that really determines who you allow to see it. Now, RareX doesn't replace any, if you have other research going on, we don't replace that. It also doesn't replace clinician-sponsored or clinical studies. But what we might be able to do is help connect patients to clinical studies. If a researcher comes in, identifies these 7 patients would be ideal for a study I'm doing, we help make that connection. But again, you don't decide to do that until that time comes. So why did FAM177A1 decide to even participate? One, this is global, and with rare, the numbers are always so small that we need a collection from anywhere in the world, and we need also to get it to eyeballs of researchers anywhere in the world. As I mentioned, it's all patient-owned and managed. There's no cost for the patient organizations or the patients themselves. There's also no cost for the researchers. So the barrier is very low to, one, enter your data, get it safely collected, but also for researchers to go look at the data. And when I say safely collected, this is what's very important. We handle all the survey development, and they're very structured and standardized. So they would, FDA would approve the particular surveys that we are developing. And I'll explain the whole survey in a little bit. And we handle all the governance. So if there's particular rules for GDPR, which is internet rules for Europe, we handle all that. And we handle, basically we make sure that everything's handled ethically and securely and safely to the highest standards. So those are the big reasons why the group decided to work with us. And really, what's the benefit for the patients, or patients' families themselves? So one is we will return some of this aggregate level data back to the leadership of the patient organization. So patients can see comparisons, how maybe their patient is doing compared to another patient. Again, nobody's identified. It just helps to understand where you are in your journey with a rare disease. As I mentioned before, there's a chance that you could become eligible for clinical trials. Again, your data is seen by, it could be a statistician in the UK, it could be a citizen scientist in India, it could be a researcher with a university or an institution in Japan. I mean, anywhere in the world, researchers working on rare disease can see this data, and they have a way to query the data too. It offers a chance to connect with patient organizations. What will happen, especially with bigger number organizations, sometimes there are multiple patient organizations for one disease, and yet the way we set it up with RareX is this is the one database for all those groups to come and use if they want. And the other benefits, as I mentioned before, you get to manage who sees your data throughout. This is kind of how it works. Along the top line, you'll see different patient communities, and there's yours. So you have your own nonprofit that's working on this rare disease. You have your own website. Your website actually connects. There's a page that now connects over to what I'll call a community page. The community page is sort of your front door, your disease's front door to get into the data platform, and I'll show you how that works. Once in the data collection program itself, one of the very first surveys after you fill out consent and data sharing and just some general demographic info, one of the most important ones to fill out next is health and development, because that's really what gets it going. And that's a sort of a head to toe survey, which I'll explain further. But based on your answers on that health and development survey, other surveys more specific to that body system will be presented to you. And then on the back end of all this, researchers, again, can be international researchers, it could be at a pharmaceutical company, it could be at an educational institution, can see the research all de-identified, or all the survey responses all de-identified. So the left-hand side kind of shows the old model. Patient groups might work with a particular researcher, but often that research, that data would be with that institution that researcher was working on. And it may not be available to researchers anywhere in the world. The model to the right is different patient organizations enter their data into the whole cloud that RareX has of patient data, and researchers, multiple researchers, can get into it and see it. So let's, well, I'm going to go through really just how you get started and what it takes. And it's actually, it's very easy, but there's a couple little tips along the way that we're going to give you to make it even easier. You'll get started by basically offering, you'll have an email address, your email address you want to use for this, and you'll create a password, very typical. We ask that you use Google Chrome or Apple Safari or Microsoft Edge as far as browsers go. Don't use the old Internet Explorer, which is Microsoft. Don't use Mozilla. It won't work. And what you do not need to get started is you don't need a lot of time. And you also don't have to finish all at once. The way we structured it is to be very convenient for patients and patient families to fill things out and come back. So the way it'll start is you can start with your own website for the nonprofit. You'll come to a community page. At that point, you'll enter in and you'll get a two-step authentication, which I'll show you. Once you get that, then you're inside the data collection program, which we call DCP a lot in this presentation. And you'll fill out a consent form, a data sharing form, and you'll jump right in to the surveys themselves. So if you were to start at your website for FAM177A1, this is the page that Jill got up on the site. It's under the research tab. The very top bar was just to register for this webinar, but that very bottom bar is a way to get to the front door or the community page that I mentioned. When you get to the community page, this is kind of what you'll see at the very beginning. That's the URL for the community page. And maybe Caitlin, do you want to put that into the chat too, so they have it? The community page really just explains what the data collection program is. There's a get started button there. That's where you're going to start. The community pages also has at the bottom of it frequently asked questions. It also has ability to do some limited translation on the community page itself. The whole data collection program right now is still in English, but we're working as fast as we can to get other translations up, just because of the governance requirements. That takes quite a bit of time. But within next year, we will have Spanish, Portuguese, and I believe French for the actual data collection program. So the first time you log in, you'll hit that start button and you'll get to sort of what I'll call a pre-qualifying page. Just so you're going to put your name, your email, your phone number in case we need to contact you, date of birth. You'll acknowledge that you're over 18 years old. And then at the bottom, you'll acknowledge how you're coming in to do this. I believe so. Just so you can give me a nod, you don't have to go off mute, but I assume most of you are going to be caregivers of a patient versus patients themselves. Yeah, okay. So you're going to hit that caregiver participant. At a later time, I'm going to show you how to enter your patient's name, but just as far as logging this, and you're going to own the account, you will be the caregiver participant. And well, that's what I just mentioned there. So that's what you will be choosing for everyone on this particular call. We do have groups where there are, the patients themselves are the ones filling all this out. We also have groups where tragically the person with the rare disease has passed away and somebody else is filling it out for them. So after you fill that out, you'll get an email back and it'll give you a link to create your password. We haven't had a lot of issues with this email coming back out. and ended up in a spam or junk folder. But if for some reason you don't seem to see it, I would check those locations too. Again, this is all in the process of getting your account established. Once you get that email back, you'll click back in. You'll enter, this will start the verification process. So you'll enter your email address, you'll say send verification code. You'll get a verification code as an email. You'll enter that code, and then you'll be able to create or change your password for the first time. And then you will be able to basically go back to that original login and just simply enter your email and password to sign in. If you, at any time, if you want to see our privacy policy or terms of use, those are also available. You will see another terms of use when you first get into the data collection program itself, which you will have to accept. This is part of Matrix. Matrix is sort of the backbone technology we use for the data collection program. It's basically just, it's a pretty typical terms of use, except for the fact that many times terms of use hide the fact that they're doing all kinds of things with your data that you're not aware of. That's not what happens here. You control who gets to see your data, and I'll explain where that happens. As you're going through the consent form, and this is the RareX consent form, we've structured it in a way to make it as simple as possible. We've did it in sort of a Q&A format to make it easy to understand. Again, our big goal is transparency to the highest level, but we do a Q&A. We present a question, we offer a brief answer, but then if you want a deeper answer, you can click learn more and you get more explanation about it. And you'll go through this for several pages, just in acknowledging that really you'll be hitting next because you'll be going through this for several pages. And again, our goal is to be as transparent as possible. And then you get to the actual checking the boxes in the informed consent. Taking part with RareX DCP for one or more of the following reasons. You click that box. RareX may contact me with follow-up research surveys. This one's very important to do yes to, because when you do that head-to-toe study, it's going to say, do you have vision issues? And if you say yes, then we will provide future surveys on vision. So that's all these are going to be very important to check yes on. And again, it's all the identified data anyways. This next one, the bottom, RareX or a qualified patient organization may contact me if a researcher thinks I qualified to be part of a clinical trial. Again, this is no obligation to participate in a clinical trial, but if you are a perfect match for a trial that's happening, checking yes would allow us to reach back out to you or to see if you'd like to participate. So if you're filling out on behalf of a child, if you're the caregiver, you just want to make sure that when you're filling these things in, you're putting the proper information then about the child, legal given name, this type of stuff. The reason why, what can happen is sometimes autofill. I think it's shut off, but sometimes on certain computers, autofill happens and people fly through it and suddenly they realize they put their data in for the child's data. So you just want to read what you're putting in. And then there's some very general demographic info. And this demographic info is actually collected on both caregivers and patients. And again, I'm going to show you a little bit of how you enter your first patient. But this, at first, you're going to be doing demographic info on yourself. Then as you fill this out, there will be a drop-down menu for the disease or of the different diseases. So you'll look for your particular disease. So you'll scroll until you see FAM177A1. And you'll click that. Also, if there are other symptoms or other diagnosis you'll have a chance to enter those throughout. In fact, there's a whole diagnostic survey too. This is part of the sharing survey, but basically it offers many different examples of how you might share your data. So the first one is general research. So that means that's the broadest. That's what's helpful for that is it'll reach the most researchers. What's different from that, and number two is just simply researchers who are in health, medical, biomedical research. Number one includes those, but then also has, say, if a researcher is a demographer or a statistician or a citizen scientist, they might be able to participate with that general research. We highly, highly recommend going to as general as possible. Everything clicked after this would just narrows the kind of researcher that could see this data. We do that for transparency, and it's completely your option. It's just the whole reason you're here in the first place is to have researchers find this data. And something coming up, and I'll mention at the very end, we're going to be doing an open data science challenge, which is kind of a data hackathon, where researchers from all over the world will be able to come and look at this data across all of RareX, and we'll have special challenges and try and find out conclusions to certain rare diseases. So the best way to participate in that too is also hit general research. These are some other more limiting options for research. Again, my recommendation is don't click these boxes. They would, like, one is, I'll give my research only to non-commercial reasons. So I'll only give it to educational institutions, but I don't want any pharmaceutical person to see it. Or I only want researchers who are tied with an institutional review board, but that might eliminate, say, a citizen scientist or an AI expert who's doing things with this data. So again, that first general research is the optimum to click. These section about surveying, this is a little bit what I call it sort of future proofing. We're not collecting biological samples right now, but that is something we might be able to do down the road. So one, the question is, do you know if you've had biological samples collected for research? And second, if you have, would you be interested in possibly linking the data from those samples to this data? And again, we're not doing that today, but down the road we might be able to. So if there's a biorepository somewhere that you're involved with, we might be able to work with that researcher and connect the data. Same goes for medical records. If you have an interest down the road in possibly having your electronic health records connected to the data in RareX, you can check yes here. Also, if you have participated in other research, if you'd like to possibly have the data from that research connected to your RareX data, you can click yes or no, or from other sources. So if you have participated in some other research and you are interested in possibly connecting that data, and you happen to know the study name or the study researcher, this is an open box where you can list something about that. Again, it's okay if you don't know the exact details of that, but it's something that we can possibly help connect later if we have a little bit of information on this. There's an option where you can share your name and email with the patient community. I'm sorry, in this case, the nonprofit of FAM177A1. Obviously, they know who you are because you're on this session. But if you are open to sharing your just name and email with even, say, another patient advocacy group starts up in this space, that's checking this would allow for that. Then what we take this data and we create little dashboards for the patient community leadership where they can provide data back out to the community. So if you're okay letting your data be part of those dashboards, again, it's all de-identified. So it's just one more number in the data. Then please check yes here too. Okay, so you've gotten through all that, and now you'll get to a screen where you can now add your patient, which in this case will probably be a child or family member. And so you'll click that and you'll go through a pretty similar process. One thing to always make sure when you're looking at this, that you're on the upper right corner, it says, in this case, caregiver, but now you're actually viewing the pages for the patient themselves. So if for some reason, this doesn't happen as much later when you get into surveys, but in the very beginning, you want to make sure that you're answering for the patient. When you first start the process of answering survey questions for the patient, you want to start with this health and development survey. The reason is this is a head-to-toe survey. It has 43 questions. These time estimates on here are very generous. In most cases, people have said it's taken them a third of the time that we project here. So
Hey,
in the case, yeah.
If I can jump in.
Yeah.
I've completed all of these surveys and none of them took as long as the estimate said. So
Yep. Yeah,
those are
that's
very
great.
generous estimates.
Yeah, and yeah, that's good. So yeah, most people find it pretty easy. The health and development is super important to do first, though, because that's sort of a head to toe. So are there issues with vision? Are there issues with behavioral development? Are there issues with skin? Are there muscular issues? And they're all yes, no. And depending how you answer, if you say yes, there are skin issues, then another set of surveys will come up related to skin issues. You say no, you don't have to answer a lot of surveys that are not specific to how you answered that. Now, there are other what we call standalone surveys, like this race and ethnicity. That's more for demographics, and also this diagnostic survey. But I would always recommend, as far as an order goes, do the health and development first, and then if you get level 2 surveys, start filling those out, and then come back and do diagnostic. You'll see you'll have this dashboard. This dashboard will say really what hasn't been filled out yet, and then once it's completed, it'll be in the completed tab. So you can always see what's new, what new surveys might be available to you to fill out. As I mentioned, the general health and development, again, they're very yes, no questions. Have you had issues with eyes and vision? Have you had issues with sleep? So you can answer yes, or you can answer unsure. You may not know. And an unsure can also still trigger a level 2 survey, because maybe by hearing those kinds of questions in the level 2, you're like, oh yeah, there was an issue with that. Again, this is just some other questions in health and development. We ask if you've had any genetic testing, or you've done a genetic test report. Then later I'm going to show you a way that you can actually upload that genetic test report, which we recommend. And we will also, once the report is voted, curate that report to remove any identifiable data to who the actual patient is, but allow that data result of that to be linked to this data. In fact, this is where you do it. On the left-hand side, there's a tab called Documents, and you can upload a genetic test report simply from there if you already have it. And these are kind of the screens that you would see to do that. Click to upload, and you'll even label, well, what are you uploading? Is an audiology? Is it a lab report? Is it a genetic test? So you'll note that. As I mentioned, once you get past that health and development, then you get into very specific level 2 surveys. And a level 2 survey will go more specific in particular symptoms and issues. In this case, it's eyes and vision. So it'll talk about, are there issues with eye movement? Is there visual impairment? Is there a difference in eye size, unusual iris? And so you'll answer these questions as yes or no. And then it will ask, well, when was the symptom first appeared, or when was it actually diagnosed by a doctor? It's okay if you don't know, you could just click unsure. But it just gives you it gives us a sense sometimes of timing, because so much, as you may know with rare disease, that you see a symptom, you try to talk to a doctor about it. And it takes a while sometimes for the acknowledgement of, oh, yes, that is a symptom that is part of this particular rare disease. And so we try to understand that timing from symptoms first preparing to actual diagnosis.
Tom, can I jump in for another?
Yeah, of course.
So I know I'm talking to other parents that have, 2 affected kids. So the survey and the questionnaire filling out is just a double whammy for us. I'm really sensitive to that. It's one of my least favorite parts of managing our kids' care. So I was really sensitive to that when I was onboarding with RareX. But I felt like going through this, they have done a nice job of minimizing questions and forms, like just the important stuff. And a lot of them are yes, no, you don't have to elaborate. And when, remembering the timing of symptom onset is sometimes a blur for me, especially having 2 affected kids. And I checked with the RareX folks and they said, you don't need to go back and dig through your records and find out that precise thing. So don't feel like you have to do that. Just sit down, grab a cup of coffee, fill out the form as best that you can in that moment, and don't stress over it. Like, don't feel like it has to be perfect.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good point. So as you go through this process, you will you'll get the enjoyment of seeing how many surveys you've completed. You can always go back and view a survey that you've worked on, or you can actually change it if your information. Well, you could change it if you didn't feel something was accurate the first times, or you didn't know a diagnosis stage. You want to go back and add it, or you can also go back and work on a survey if there's some new thing happening, some new symptom that has developed. So that's the value of RareX, and that we'd love for you to, at a minimum, come back once a year and just kind of go through, because that's what makes this a longitudinal study or a natural history study. So we can see progression of disease also. Yeah, so in some cases, and this would be an example of quality of life survey. So this is quality of life will deal with everything from mental health and depression to ability to do things, to even communication. And in some cases, a patient may not be communicative, or you may not feel like you can answer because you don't really know certain pain levels that are happening. And that's okay. You can just say unable to answer because of the child's condition. So that's really the essence of the actual filling everything in and getting started. As Jill mentioned, she found it pretty easy to do and to get it going. And why we feel we're a little different from other institutions doing this. One is, as I keep harboring on, is just we make the data available to any researcher anywhere. So it's not specific to, say, our own nonprofit that I'm involved with. We've done studies very specifically with Duke or with Children's Hospital of Chicago, and that data has pretty much sat there. It wasn't available. So this is what's different. What's great is researchers can also do cross-disease research, because even though we are rare, we're not so rare sometimes, because a lot of rare diseases suffer from the same different symptoms and conditions, and a pharmaceutical company developing a drug for seizures will help multiple kinds of diseases. So there's a lot of cross-disease research opportunity. As I mentioned, we will give aggregated data back to the community leadership from time to time, that they can share back out to the whole community. And as I mentioned, this can complement other studies. In fact, this is kind of can also authenticate other studies too, if there's other natural history studies that you guys are doing over the time. Also mentioned that this whole Open Science Data Challenge. So beginning in March, we are opening the data we have in a competition of with researchers to go dig into the data and try and get some learnings out of all the data within the RareX database. And to participate in this, really, it's just getting your data in. So if your data in, if you're going deep enough into the level 2 surveys, you will have good, valid data that can be part of this Open Science Data Challenge. We asked that if you have genetic test reports, to try and get those uploaded by January 15th, and to get any of your survey data done by Rare Disease Day, which is February 28th. That will allow in March for us to kick off this challenge. The challenge will take several months, and we'll report back to any results we get out of this data challenge. So it's kind of a little bit of a hackathon, if you will, but for rare disease data. And as you're going along, if you have questions, please send questions to support@rarex.org. That should be your first line of sort of questioning. But Jill might be able to help answer other questions or participation type questions too. And that's it. Any questions from Jeff or Janet in particular on this process?
Jill, I guess this question for you. All the data that we sent to Stanford, like the medical records and all that stuff, how's it going to get up into RareX? Do we have to do it? Do we have to go through all the consent and all that stuff for the medical records, or is it because we did release forms and stuff for them?
You're muted, Jill.
Thanks, sorry. Yeah, first of all, thank you for doing that, because that's going to help with that publication. But unfortunately, that is considered a separate study. So you'll have to do all the consents for this. But there's for this RareX platform, other than uploading your genetic report, there's not going to be a lot of uploading of medical records. It's really just, this is patient reported data about their symptoms and about their quality of life.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully it's not going to feel too duplicative for you.
No, that's fine. I was just curious because it said that there were some questions on the form. It said someone will be reaching out for medical records and all that stuff, and just wanted to kind of get an idea of the extent of our involvement in having to release and do all that.
Yeah, if you did participate in a study, if you want to list that study at a late, and you are open to us connecting that data, again, it's no guarantee, but there's a chance we could go back to that researcher and say, okay, this person who entered the RareX study said they'd love to connect their data, but the problem is we don't know exactly how that consent of their study was structured. I mean, their study could even say this is only for Stanford or whatever. I have no idea what it says. So it's really just, again, more of a, it could be an opportunity in the future. It's not a guarantee. Also too, I didn't really explain it, but there's if you are deep in a survey, let me see if I have the screen up on. Yeah, here's an example. See that little red X in the upper right-hand corner? So say you're in the middle of a survey, phone rings, you have to go do something else. You hit that little red X, which is often, it's a scary thing. And this thing, it's not a scary thing. It's actually your friend. You hit the little red X, it'll save everything that you've done on that particular survey. Now, every time you finish a survey, it's automatically saved. But say you're halfway through a survey and you want to save it, just hit that little red X. Absolutely saved.
Okay.
So and that's kind of important too, because as you'll notice, real mix of times and surveys, number of questions related to these surveys. This is a chance where you can steal away, gosh, I've got 5 minutes, I'm waiting in line for something at the grocery store, maybe I can quickly do this on my phone. It is, the view of this is a little different in a mobile setting because obviously this layout's very wide, so it's more stacked in mobile. And we're trying to improve the mobile settings, you know, as we go along even better. But you know, you can just take little, hopefully short little segments out of your day. Don't feel like you have to do this all at once, and just come back in when it's convenient to answer questions.
Sounds good.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment that
Mhm.
Just this week, I was contacted by a researcher in Saudi Arabia who is interested in studying our gene and our disease.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I am so excited. Like I've been told by so many other patient groups, you know, you need good data, you need good data. And it was very abstract to me. I didn't quite understand the importance of data. And now in real time, I'm getting it because I can say, you know, if you can get your kids' data in there, I can say, yeah, everything's in Rare X, just go grab it. And it really does accelerate that research project, the research and, you know, hopefully getting to some answers for us.
Yeah, and probably worth mentioning. So the back end of this, the researcher platform, it's called Terra. It's part of the Broad Institute with Harvard and MIT. Terra has been used for years with other kinds of databases. So researchers are probably pretty familiar with it, and we can connect a researcher to it. And that's where they basically can have, it's almost like, I like to describe it, it's like the reference area of a library. You can go in, you can work with the books there. You can't take the books out, but you can work with them in a sort of a cloud setting and work with the data that's in there. And that's how researchers use this. Great. Any other questions at all? All right. Well, you know, Jill, thanks so much. And I'm very excited for this group to get going. Obviously, questions along the way, feel free to send them to support@rarex.org. And yeah, we hope that your community jumps into it and gets going, and we get some data going soon for the the hackathon coming up.
Yeah. And I just want to ask, have you ever had a group have perfect attendance for their entire patient population?
As far as signing up onto the yeah, so
Coming to the launch party.
oh, coming to the launch party, no.
Well, now you do. You
You're
did it.
already ahead of the game. Yeah, no,
That's right.
we definitely have not. And if this is the extent of your community, the other thing is you guys will. We challenge groups to try and get at least 50% of their known community to log
Right,
in and do this.
We're gonna be at 100%.
That's great.
We're setting the bar really high.
You are. That's great. And when the reason why we even say 50% of a community is just because then it has value to researchers. And researchers are like, oh, there's only 10% of this disease community. Well, that doesn't help me much. There's not enough data there. But if you're the 100% of that community, that's very helpful.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope this goes well for you guys. And again, ask questions along the way, and hopefully we'll get more and more from your community over time. They'll discover us.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Caitlin. Janet, Jeff, great to see you. Give those kids a snuggle.
Have a good day.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.